An overview of current events, by D.K. through R.M.A. The human organism is changing. This change has been in progress for quite some time, and we are now reaching the so-called tipping point. It must be remembered, when considering the repercussions inherent in this crucial moment in time, that when I refer to the human organism, I do not mean that of one individual of the human species. Rather, I am referring to the entire humanity, which is one body, composed of several billion cells. This organism, humanity, has been growing, slowly at first, then faster and faster, both physically, in terms of its size, number of cells, as well as mentally and emotionally, up to its current level of evolution. Let me begin by explaining that, genetically speaking, the human body has reached its utmost level of evolution. In other words, the physical configuration of human beings cannot evolve beyond its current level. Physical perfection has been reached, and the body cannot evolve further unless human DNA can effect the necessary changes from within itself. Some obvious questions arising from these assumptions are: 1. Can or will a genetic change occur of its own accord? 2. If this change is presupposed, how can we monitor its unfoldment, or even be aware that it is taking place? 3. Once we acquire the necessary awareness that of such a change taking place within us, is there anything we could or should do to facilitate it, or is it better not to interfere with the process? 4. And finally, what can we expect from an evolutionary quantum leap of this kind? Or, assuming the above will take place, how are we going to function in the future? Humans are a genetic experiment. This is not often admitted, nor talked about, even by those who know that it is so. This statement is not meant to diminish or trivialize the value of human life in any way, only to reveal its origins. This genetic experiment has been extremely successful, in that it represents the outcome of the cooperation of many highly evolved beings who worked together and donated of their own genetic material to achieve the desired results. In the Bible, for example, among other ancient sacred scriptures, we read an account, never fully explained by the ministers and representatives of any religion, whereby humans are first created, male and female, along with all other forms of life on earth, both vegetable and animal. Of these first humans we are only told as much, that they were created in the beginning and that they were of both genders. Actually, in the Bible we read that they are told to be fruitful and multiply. A few paragraphs later we hear of the establishing of the Garden of Eden, where God dwells, and where he seems to implement a second creation, though in a smaller scale, meaning that once again, in this garden, he puts all sorts of fruit-bearing plants and live animals, only to realize, shortly thereafter, that there is no gardener to tend his divine mounts. It is upon this realization that God, according to the biblical account, takes a bit of stuff, matter, and fashions Adam, another man, different from the previous human in that he has a name to begin with. Naming means recognizing individuality, so we can infer that Adam is created at a higher level of evolution than the previous human, whose name we'll never know. The Lord God seems pleased with his new creature, at first, even to the point of noticing that Adam is lonely. This is when the Lord God puts Adam in a deep sleep, extracts a rib from his chest, and out of he fashions Eve, the woman, created to be Adam's companion and mate. The rest is history, as the saying goes. His story, not casually worded, for in the account itself we are told there came a time when woman, Eve, was demoted to the status of a subject in relation to her husband, Adam. This injunction, on the part of the Lord God, comes as a punishment, according to the biblical account, after Eve breaks the rules and eats of the forbidden fruit of knowledge. What sort of knowledge could confer so much power that the Lord God would feel threatened if it were shared? We are told that this is the knowledge of good and evil, in other words, of the duality inherent in the acquisition of free will, that which Eve exerts by the act of disobeying. There is much to ponder even just up to this point, for if we were to put ourselves in Eve's position, we must ask ourselves, what would I have done? Would I have chosen to obey the Lord God and remain willless? Or would I have been curious enough to be driven into willfulness? Would I have trusted the serpent, symbolic of human consciousness awakening? Or would I have silenced my own inner voice in order to conform to the will of the outer command? Interestingly enough, and in retrospect, it isn't the serpent who lies to Adam and Eve, but the Lord God himself, since he tells them they will surely die from eating the forbidden fruit, and they don't. Not only do they not die, but they become, as one of us, to quote his own words, according to the account. The serpent, on the contrary, seems to tell the truth, in that he predicts exactly what happened as a result of eating the fruit. Man and woman became self-aware, to be understood as the capacity to choose according to one's own discernment. Did the Lord God lie about the tree of immortality as well? Is there such a tree? So far we haven't found it, but we read that the Lord God chases the first couple from the garden in order to prevent them from eating of its fruit as well. In his fury, the Lord God tells us we are made of dust, and to dust we shall return. Dust, symbolically, represents the element earth, the very molecules of which we are made. Our physical apparatus, so to speak, the least durable in time, though not at all the least important. Dust, read earth, represents the plunge into the one-way path of forced evolution through matter, via matter. Without this passage through the lowest level of involution, evolution cannot be completed. This is true of all forms of consciousness, not just humans. The divine, in order to know itself, in every particle that exists or has ever existed, must follow this path. Down to dust and all the way up to stars is our preordained destiny. So, in this at least, the Lord God doesn't lie. We are made of stardust, and to stardust we shall return. He just made it sound a lot bleaker than it need be. Without this transition, from the highest to the lowest, and back, evolution, the outer expression of the divine plan intrinsic in all things, could not take place. Total, absolute light must join itself with total, absolute darkness. Only then, in the moment of reunion, note the re. Through consciousness, does the alchemy, transmutation, occur. Many who arrive at this level of self-awareness may fall into the trap of asking why is this necessary, especially since it involves suffering. I call it a trap because it really is such, created and laid down by forces antithetical to evolution, for reasons I will not expound upon at the moment. To say the least, this trap causes a great waste of time and energy, but regardless, it is a powerful one. Many philosophers, thinkers, psychologists and humanists spend entire lives running around in circle inside this trap, without noticing the light above them. Asking why only leads back to why. It is more useful to begin by asking what, if questioning is found necessary. Whether we recognize it or not, we are facing a moment of great significance in the history of humanity. We all participate, consciously or not, in the creation of a new paradigm, one that involves, or rather demands, adaptation to many changes and upheavals. Many pretend that all is as usual, and that life goes on with its ups and downs, but even the most stubbornly insensitive person feels, deep down in their being, that it isn't so. This change involves consciousness at all levels of being, since consciousness is the one pervasive factor of which our universe is composed. The lesson of duality has been our foremost teacher for the past 300,000 years, and we are, humanity as a whole organism, about to graduate to the next level of evolution, where duality no longer exists. This time of change, from duality to unity, can be compared to a final exam, whereby from high school, for example, one who takes it successfully, earns the right to attend college. All exams are challenging, both physically as well as psychologically, for any serious student. One has to prepare for it, if one is to succeed, strenuously, at times, even painfully. Painfully is a strong word, perhaps not the best to describe the state of being to which I am referring. What kind of pain am I trying to define? The pain of reprioritizing one's life. The pain of letting go of what is no longer useful. The pain of reconstructing one's identity, based on a new, different, maybe more demanding set of values. The personal ego has to yield and refrain from taking control of the individual will, wishes and ambitions, in order to allow higher energies to manifest. Maturation is a term often used in reference to one's passage from adolescence to adulthood, and this analogy fits perfectly as a description of what humanity is currently undergoing. The reptilian brain, in spite of what we have been made to believe, has been in charge, so to speak, of humanity's collective choices, social, economic and otherwise. Mors Chia, R.M.A, your death, my life, has been the motto for the entire time of human evolution, even though that level of existence had already been mastered long ago and quite well by the dinosaurs that populated and ruled the planet. This approach to life, though perfectly adequate for reptiles, represents a setback for humans, and mammals in general, whose brain has evolved to a much higher degree. In the mammal, the first spark of progress, in evolutionary terms, can be seen in the maternal instinct, which leads, in a more advanced stage, to the social instinct, and all the way up to compassion, the highest level of divine manifestation expressed through spiritualized matter. Once matter awakens to compassion, the door to immortality, intended as embodied divinity, opens up and individual consciousness can finally rejoin with its source, where eternal peace, life and bliss abide. To be continued.